Hello, brilliant and embodied souls. My name is Kim. Welcome back to my channel. I have a tag for us. Now, I realize I am a very small channel, so if anybody ends up doing this tag, I'm going to be thrilled. And if nobody does, I'm going to do my absolute best not, I repeat, not to get hung up on that. There are so many instances where I don't take social risks because I'm worried I'll end up feeling disappointed. I'll end up confirming those insidious beliefs that I'm not good enough, or I'm not enough, or people hate me, people don't like me. All of that mind chatter that exists to keep me safe. Now, as a somatic psychotherapist, as a embodiment coach and guide, I very much understand how these types of psychological mechanisms can really embed themselves into our way of being. So we sometimes have to take risks, do some experimentation in order to overcome these types of limiting beliefs and psychological patterning that we've adopted to protect ourselves. Wow, that was a really personal and long-winded way of introducing this tag. Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of the tag, and then I will flip us around in order to take a closer look at the decks. Pivotal decks. So my inspiration with this video and with this tag is coming back to reflections on my tarot journey. I mentioned in a video, my top 5 tarot resources, that this is in some ways a 5-year anniversary for me. And I imagine a 5-year anniversary for many, many people. So many of us got into or deepened our tarot practice due to the pandemic 5 years ago. I never collected decks prior to 2020. I mean, or I shouldn't say that. I had like 3 decks. You know, I did not have what I would consider a collection at that point in time. But 2020 came around. That's really when I started to take my tarot journey, take my card practice journey, and take my collecting very, very seriously. Well, as seriously as, I don't know, what I wanted to take it anyway. So I wanted to propose this tag as a way to look back on this 5-year collection period, this 5-year tarot practice period, and think about the decks that have been really pivotal to me. And I'm defining pivotal as decks that really shifted the way I understand the tarot, that really shifted how I read the cards. I'm, of course, including oracle decks. I don't do Lenormand or Kipper or any of those other cartomancy techniques. So for me, it's like tarot oracle. But, people can open this tag up to include other cartomancy systems and ways of reading within this idea. So I really wanted to consider the decks that fundamentally shifted my practice, but also shifted how I think about myself, as well as shifted how I approach different domains of my life. So I will include all the prompts down below in the description box if you want to join in. No worries if you don't. No worries if this just ends up being a delightful video where you get to see some really awesome, meaningful, deep, inspiring decks. That's another way of understanding this tag, right? Like the decks that just really got into our psyches, like really got into our souls and mixed things up for us. All right, I am going to flip us around, as I said, so that we can take a closer look at the decks, and I will see you momentito. Okay, we are back and ready to talk about pivotal decks. So I have 5, but really more like, I guess we could think about this in terms of 8 prompts, because the 5th prompt has some nuances to it. So my first prompt here is Pivotal Tarot. This is a deck that changed the way you think and feel about tarot. What deck helped advance your understanding of tarot? For this, this isn't going to surprise a lot of people. I went with the Marielle. I got the Marielle Tarot fairly early on, actually, in my tarot journey. Maybe like a year in or something, because I saw folks speaking about this deck on TarotTube, and the images just spoke to me on another level. I did not understand what was happening in these images. All I knew was that the artwork was profound. Yes, there is nudity. Yes, there is a lot of provocation happening within this deck. It is very raw. It feels deeply esoteric. It is deeply esoteric. However, or not, however, I mean, those qualities really appealed to me. And I knew that this deck and I were going to have some kind of dance. Whether that was going to be for a couple of songs, or whether we would be dancing together until the end of time. We were gonna tango. We were going to clasp hands and just do some moves together. And that took time. I really have had to grow into this deck. It has taught me a lot about what the tarot can be. The biggest thing about this deck is how it brings the minor cards back into the themes of the major arcana. So all the tens correspond to the world card, and the shifting of time, changing of energy, right? The ongoing process of evolution. What is up becomes down, what is down becomes up, right? All of the tens within this deck correspond to the Wheel of Fortune. All the sixes, they correspond to, oh my gosh, no, I'm blanking on it. The Lovers, all the sevens, the Chariot, etc. That's a really fascinating way of working with the structure of the tarot, and really looping the tarot back around to itself, which is a really exciting proposition to me. And that really changed how I look at the cards. I was somebody who started off with a RWS-esque deck. And then I did start with that system, but I don't know, there's something about the RWS or RWS inspired cards that never quite sat right with me. And I really couldn't put my finger on what that was. What I realize now upon reflection and what this deck actually taught me was that there, even though the RWS and decks that are clones have these lovely pictorial stories playing out in front of us, and I like that. I like the storytelling and narrative aspects of that deck. That still locks in a really particular way of seeing, like, say, the Six of Wands or the Queen of Swords or like whatever, right? That locked in aspect feels limiting to me. So when I realized that there are other types of decks out there, right? Like me being an American, most of what American folks and, maybe people from the UK think of the tarot as, right? They think of the RWS or some other like Golden Dawn kind of deck. But, Marseille decks and even the Thoth really start to open up how we understand what the tarot can be, right? Working elementally, working numerologically, working in reference to a particular card, like the nines coming back to the Hermit. That's another way of diving into the tarot and understanding the meanings of the cards. So this deck was pivotal in all of those ways that I've just described. The art is just also beyond words. This deck is a deck that I don't read for others with. It's a deck that I keep strictly for myself. I love taking my time with this deck. This deck is the village wizard who you're going to have to earn your respect. They need to trust you. You need to earn this deck's respect. That is done through study. That is done through time. I've put in the time. This deck and I have a lovely relationship at this juncture. But it's not for the faint of heart. I will say that. And that's pretty clear from the images. We're almost all the way through. So like, why the hell not? This deck is not messing around. It's not a quick read. It's not a flash in the pan, right? You're gonna have to really bask in the glory that is the Marielle. This is, of course, the second edition. I wouldn't mind getting my hands on a first edition, but they're pretty expensive. I don't know if I really need to do that at this point in time. Prompt number 2. A pivotal oracle. A deck that changed the way you think about and feel about oracles. What deck helped advance your understanding of what oracles can do for your practice? Here, I would like to share the Ancient Ritual Postures. This is a oracle deck by Belinda Gore. She is a former psychotherapist herself. She paired up with Felicity Goodman, who was an anthropologist and studied these ritual postures. She was in awe of indigenous cultures all across the world who put a lot of time and effort into documenting through statues and, mainly statues, these very specific postures, right? And these postures are sort of odd, right? Like we've got this guy like cupping his hands, in a very specific way. So Goodwin became kind of curious about these cultures who clearly wanted to memorialize these postures. Fast forward, she and Belinda Gore have held many group rituals where people assume these postures. They will use drumming and rattles to invoke deep trance states. Those trance states take people to phenomena related to the essence of these statues, the cultures that they come from, and may tap into the significance or the purpose of what these statues were representing for these various cultures across the world. This whole concept is so intriguing to me. I have done work with this deck, exactly as I just described to all of you, picking a card, setting myself up, holding the posture. There are instructions, in the book for specifically how to do that. I won't really get into that here, but I have used this oracle deck as more than just a oracle. And that has really shifted for me what becomes possible with cards. The cards are a very psychological, heady, imaginative, analytic type of practice. So a deck that brought me into my body, that inspired very transformative experiences. These postures are not messing around, let me tell you. I was just blown away. I was very, very inspired and found a lot of meaning. This deck has changed some of the way I approach my spiritual practice in really beautiful and wonderful ways. Can you use this oracle as just an oracle, right? The short answer, yes, you absolutely can. You don't need to do the postures. This deck provides a lot of guidance and wisdom through the guidebook. You would very much need the guidebook because, for example, if you draw Greek youth and maiden, I mean, unless you've read the guidebook and really internalized the messages of the guidebook, I don't think that would do a whole heck of a lot for most people in a reading. So yeah, this is not, doesn't have, there's the title of the card in reference to the statue it's depicting. There's no keywords to really clue us into the essence here. The artwork tells us a little bit, but if I'm being honest, the background here is more decorative. There is some indication vis-a-vis the artwork, like the essence of the statue, the essence of the posture. But pretty limited. So this is a oracle where you really, really need the guidebook. And I know that's not everybody's jam. So again, I don't read for other people with this deck. This is a just for me deck, but it has been profound. Let me just stick it back in its box. Otherwise, we are going to have a crazy mess on our hands. Prompt number 3, pivotal practice. A deck that shifted your card reading practice. How did this deck shift the way you work with the cards? So I have for all of you the Margaret Peterson Tarot. This deck really got me out of the rote way of reading the cards. What I mean by that, right, is, okay, Father of Coins, right? Okay, businessman. What does the guidebook have to say? Oh yeah, the Father of Coins, the King of Pentacles. He's amazing with finances. He's a titan of industry, right? Like that kind of stuff. The rote meanings of the tarot are helpful to give us a foundation. However, this deck broke me out of that foundation, much like the Marielle. But this deck really slowed me down and helped me understand that the tarot can be used for meditation, can be used for journey work, can be used on a profoundly psychic level. This deck is an oracle kind of like in and of itself, because some of the cards, like especially the minors, have all of these hidden details. It's a collage deck, but there's a lot of painterliness to the minors. The majors are full on painterly, but the minor cards have quite a bit of collage work going on. And within both the majors, but the minors, you see these little bits and bobs. This is a deck that can look different or show me different things every time I pick it up. I discover new things all the time. So I'll give you an example. Okay, check out the back. For the longest time, spoiler alert, I didn't see the snake on the back of this card. I didn't see it at all. And then one day I was looking at it, and it was very profound, actually. The day I realized that there was a snake on the back of this card, was a day where I had a really, really powerful message from Hecate, who is one of my primary deities, who I have a relationship with. The serendipity was off the chart. It was a confirmation of exactly what my meditation with her had been telling me earlier that day. I mean, it was wild. So this deck has that kind of spooky magic. Like, magic is happening right here, right now. It's real. Yeah. So this deck just really changed what I do with the cards. I started meditating with the cards. I started doing journey work with the cards. And none of that is like maybe super revelatory or revolutionary to anybody who has been working with the tarot for a really long time. But again, it was a pivotal moment in my tarot journey to realize that the tarot is not just for divination. It is not just for self-reflection. It is for profound spiritual growth and development. This deck really cemented the deep meaning that can be conveyed through the cards. Yeah, and I mean, it's great, right? Like, people talk about the guidebook. Oh, by the way, this is like an older edition. I would love to get the aubergine or purple, burgundy, whatever you want to call it, edition, but I've got this one, and I just don't really like having different editions of different decks unless there's a significant reason. But sorry, I think I interrupted myself. This book is a little white book, but it is so beautiful. It's one of the best tarot books out there, honestly. And it's not it's mighty, but it's not long. It's not jam packed with information. No, 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 no. It is so succinct. It is chef's kiss. Chef's kiss. Okay, prompt number 4, pivotal perception. A deck that changed the way you see yourself or your collection. How did this deck influence your identity and perhaps shift that identity? Okay, so this is a fun one. yeah, I know. Sacred Rebel Oracle. Okay, hear me out on this. This is actually one of the very first Oracle decks I worked with. This deck came at a really important time in my life. I had begun my journey as a psychotherapist. I encountered this deck right as I started to see clients, and I was really rebelling against my previous career. I was profoundly changing how I supported myself in the world. I was going through a massive rite of passage when I encountered this deck. And it was like even before the pandemic. I didn't own the deck, but I had an opportunity to work with this deck like on the regular at the student clinic where I was training. There was a copy of this deck there, and I would do pulls like almost every day for a year while I was doing the first leg of my training. This deck was so supportive to me in embracing this idea of being a sacred rebel. Up until that point, I had sort of seen myself as rebellious, certainly, but I had never understood that this is actually a sacred duty. People who step out of the box, not that what I was just describing is like a profound stepping out of the box. But for me at that time, it really was. It was risky. It freaked me out. It took me years upon years to start to travel and traverse this path. This deck really helped me confirm that I was on the right path. It really helped me see myself as a creative. It helped me embrace expressive arts within my work as a therapist. It's so encouraging on our life path. This deck is a cheerleader, but it has some hard-hitting messages. It does point out when you're shying away from your path, maybe when you're deluding yourself or not being totally honest with yourself. It also points out, when you might be self-sabotaging or not fully showing up. This deck does have some challenging messages and some confrontational messages, but I'd say that's only like maybe 15% of the deck. The rest is very supportive, very encouraging, and that's really what I needed at the time. So embracing this idea that I'm a sacred rebel, it's okay to be rebellious, it's okay to step onto my own path, was a really important shift for me and how I saw myself. I also started to see myself as a card reader because, again, like this is one of the very first decks that I spent a lot of time with. It laid the seeds or planted the seeds for me to continue on my card reading journey, making it another really pivotal deck in how I see myself. Okay. Next up, we have prompt number 5. So as I said before, this is kind of broken up into another four prompts. So here I want to introduce pivotal recommendations. So what decks would you recommend for transformation and growth across life's major domains? The first domain is practical. So this is a deck that works well for everyday pivots. I think there's a lot of ways to interpret this idea of everyday pivots, so I will leave that all up to you. But the deck that I want to share is this one, which is the Indigo Goddess Midnight Oracle. This is on Etsy. The creator of this deck has a gazillion decks. I don't even know. I do think she or they, who, them, I don't know their gender. I know nothing about them. But I suspect that AI is being used in the creation of these decks. If the creator ever sees this, please correct me. I'm not trying to spread misinformation. Like please let me know. But that's also just a message to creators. Like, if you don't want people to think that your decks are created with AI, then like definitely let people know. And if you are using AI, I do feel you owe it to people to say as much. I want to know how AI is being used in a deck. I'm not totally opposed to it, but I do have some qualms. But okay, back to the prompt here. The reason why I picked this as a deck for everyday pivots is that this deck is completely and utterly focused on business. And I don't see a ton of decks out there that are this business oriented, and I need to pivot all the time, right? Like I need to market myself. I need to figure out like the everyday operations of being a person with a small business. While I don't really think about my therapy and coaching practices necessarily as a business per se, I mean, right, I have to support myself with that. So this helps me generate ideas. This helps me just run the everyday operations. And we often have to make pivots. This deck is perfect for pointing out when I need to network, when I need to invite a full cup, right? Like appreciate all the clients that I do have, when I need to heal, my blocks around money. Like this is just such a grounded deck in terms of its messages. I mean, the artwork is pretty cheesy. It's kind of weird. I tend to just overlook the artwork. I love the blue. Actually, like the color palette is gorgeous to me. But I kind of frankly just ignore, or I can live with, put it this way, I can live with this artwork. It's really the keywords, it's really the messages that come through with this deck. It helps me really figure out mundane financial business questions. And those are questions that a lot of us have to contend with in our late stage capitalistic nightmare. Okay, you can kind of you can sense how I feel about things lately. All right, number 2, or my second recommendation, is psychological. So this is a deck that supports profound inner reflections and growth. I have the Lantern Oracle. Many people speak about this in terms of shadow work. I don't necessarily think about I don't use those terms for how I approach my psychological work. I'm much more of a parts kind of person. Different therapeutic modalities have tapped into this idea of parts, and even when people just speak about themselves, they'll often say, "Oh, a part of me feels this way, a part of me feels that way." So I think inherently people understand that we have different parts of our psyches that are attending to different needs, and sometimes those parts don't fully understand their role. Sometimes we don't fully understand their role. So this deck really helps illuminate what different parts of me might be needing and grappling with. It definitely calls me out on my own BS, which is, I think, why people definitely align this deck with shadow work. As I think that they are defining shadow work, right? Like illuminate the shadows. It's right there on the box. But the messages in this guidebook are impressive. And I'm not generally impressed by a lot of mass market oracle decks because they tend to be kind of fluffy. They tend to be sort of surface. Frankly, they're basic. They're just basic love and light messages, and I'm not really interested in that. I mean, don't get me wrong, like I have some of those decks in my collection because there's a time and a place for light and fluffy. There absolutely is. But when it comes to a pivotal psychological deck, I want the meat. I want the goods. I want to dive deep. I want to be confronted, and I want the real deal truth. I'm not messing around. And this deck is not messing around. It delivers on exactly what I just said. It provides insight, it provides depth. It is very, very helpful because it does look at different phases of life, right? It has messages that relate to our childhood and our maidenhood. It has messages related to our caregiver phase of life. It has messages for our eldership, and then it has messages that transcend our lives, right? And really tap into powerful spiritual truths. This deck is just psychologically jam-packed. I don't know a whole lot about the author, but as I said, the guidebook is very impressive. And I also, the titles and the keywords are really solid. So I will pull this deck out to read for others when appropriate, because I can really work with, not only my knowledge of the deck, but I can work with the title and the keywords in profound and accessible ways. So this is a gem of a deck, incredibly pivotal in my practice. Okay, next, relational. So this is a deck that aids relational reflections and pivots. So we all have those moments where like, okay, I don't know if I'm approaching this relational dynamic appropriately. I think I need to shift and change how I'm thinking about this relationship. I really need to pivot my approach. The Lantern Oracle could be used for this, I think, but I have selected the Intuitive Tarot by Scylla Conway. Scylla Conway, she is such a amazing tarot and oracle deck creator. The guidebook for this deck is really good, but it's spiky. She's spiky. The guidebook is going to call you out. It's going to call you out hard. And for me, when I am looking at relational dynamics, I want to be called out. I want to understand where I'm not seeing the other person's perspective. I want to understand where I'm falling short, but I also want to understand like where the other person might not be meeting me. This deck is very spot on, at least for me, when it comes to relational readings. This deck is also a touch melancholic. It has a somber tone. It is very emotive. These are qualities that feel spot on to me when I am considering relational pivots. Something has transpired in the relationship that is making me want to question, that is making me want to reflect, that is prompting me to learn and grow. This is a very growth-oriented deck. I adore the colors. I really like the melancholic tonality. Look at this Eight of Cups. Oh, yeah. They're sad. They're struggling. They're really looking at, not even looking at this cups, and they're like, man, I gotta do something different. I don't know. This deck is just really profound. It has helped me with a lot of relational shifts and changes, pivoting how I'm approaching different dynamics. Yeah, a very pivotal deck in my practice. Also a deck that I got fairly early on in my tarot journey. I was really attracted to the artwork. And it is a nicely RWS based deck. Yeah. Okay. Our last prompt in my recommendations is a spiritual recommendation. So a deck that has guided spiritual transformations and shifts. Oh gosh, I've got a deck for you. The Mystagogus deck by Josephine McCarthy. If you don't know the work of Josephine McCarthy, prepare yourself. So Josephine considers herself a ceremonial magician, and she is one of the most prolific writers on ceremonial magic out there. She is quite the personality. She is no nonsense. She is not messing around. She calls things as she sees them. Do I agree with Josephine even like 70% of the time? No. Josephine strikes me as someone who has had to perhaps harden themselves because of their own gifts, but also, what they have experienced, what she has experienced in life. But the thing is that she is so generous. She has an entire school of magic available, free. She is a great magical mind of our time. So having a deck that she painted herself, she does have another deck out there that the art came from, I believe, her partner and maybe another artist. Don't quote me on that, but the Quorea deck. So the Quorea oracle corresponds to Quorea, the free course that I mentioned. But this deck, she created herself during the pandemic. She used all kinds of ritual and ceremonial magical operations to create this deck. Lots and lots of spirits and magical realms and concepts wanted to come through. She worked tirelessly to have these energies fully represented. She speaks about her process in a couple of podcasts that I listened to, as well as the robust guidebook that comes with this. She used a lot of specifically chosen music. It really does feel like she brought herself into trances in order to create the artwork. It's a very raw style of artwork, as you can see. When I look at this deck, I get the tingles. Because this oracle does not have any numbers or titles, it forces me to drop, just drop the pretense, drop that I know. It's asking me to really look at the images, like really feel into these images, see the divine or the different, magical realms and creatures and concepts depicted here, right? And like really experience them, which is a huge shift for me because, as somatically inclined as I am, as intuitively and emotionally inclined as I am, I do actually tend to look at the cards very analytically. I go to my internalized rote meanings of the cards very often. This deck pushes me beyond that and brings me into spiritual concepts that are at times foreign to me. I do not consider myself a ceremonial magician whatsoever. That said, I have a lot of respect for those approaches and often dip into that way of understanding magic. Again, not wholeheartedly. I'm more of a chaos-ish practitioner. So I only do that when I feel it serves me, and as a way of deconditioning my preconceived notions and like kind of mixing my own internal worldview up. Ceremonial magic is really great for that. Like outside of lodges and all that nonsense. Well, I shouldn't say nonsense. That's not fair. Anyway, this deck is just really transformational. The last thing I will say about this deck is it can be mean. This deck is about spiritual guidance, magical and spiritual development. Those are two different things. This deck often just slaps me. It's like, oh, you think you want to do, you think you want to go down that magical path. No. This is chutes and ladders. You thought you were going up a ladder. You ain't. You were going down a chute right now. This deck checks me all the time. It's not nice about it. It really isn't. This is not a feel-good deck. This is a spiky, in your face, get it together, grow up kind of deck. Very transformational though. Very spiritually transformative. Yeah, I'm going to leave it there. Oh my gosh, we're at the end of this tag. Thank you so much for joining me. Please like, subscribe, join in, and I will see you all in the next video. Thanks so much. Bye.